And we're back with another episode of On the Record with Tiffany here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer and on TAN TV, the African American Network Television. I'm so grateful for this partnership between On the Record with Tiffany and the African American Network Television. We are where we have a local feel and a global reach. And today I am honored to have the Honorable Rosie Gonzalez. Judge Gonzalez, can you tell?
Good to be here.
I'm happy to have you. Can you tell our audience a little bit about you and your specialty court and what you do?
My name is Judge Rosie Speedlin Gonzalez. I have lived in San Antonio, Texas for over 33 years. I chose to live here. I came here from Vermont, where I had gone to a military academy for a couple of years, but came to San Antonio by way of Vermont. I'm originally from Brownsville, Texas, which is the southernmost tip of Texas. I was born and raised down there and ended up in San Antonio to finish undergrad and stayed here through the 90s. Then got a gig in Austin, left for a couple years, and went back home to Brownsville for a year before I got admitted into law school and started law school as a non-traditional 33-year-old after having been in the social work fields for 11 years, and then was in solo practice, never worked for anyone else but myself for almost 17 years before I was elected to elevated to this bench in November of 2018 and took the bench on January 1st of 2019. So that's my journey to the bench.
Wow. What prompted you to go from social work to
law?
Well,
I think what happened was I got a hiccup between undergrad and grad school. The plan for my mom, for my brother and I was always to be a professional. She was always, you're going to be a professional. You're either going to be a master's level doctor, teacher or doctor or lawyer or law enforcement. She wanted us to have a career. And for me, she focused on either med school or law school. In the 80s, I wasn't focused on either one. If you're my age, I'm 56. In the 80s, there were other things we were much more interested in.
I'm 50, so yeah, right. I know what you're talking about.
We were interested in Grandmaster Flash. We were interested in a brand new drug called cocaine. We were interested in the clubs. The club scene was big. So I graduated from college, and then I started grad school, and I dropped out because as a 21-year-old, I did not have the mental acumen or maturity to value a graduate degree at 21. I dropped out. I ended up walking over to the nearest residential treatment facility by St. Mary's, and it was a facility that housed children. We had 2-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and it was a residential treatment facility. It was a lockdown facility. Kids that got dropped off to us were hogtied in the back of cars. They had the most severe conditions, mental breakdowns, emotional breakdowns. It was a mental health facility. And that launched my career into working with children with special needs. I went from there to work as an investigator at Child Protective Services, where I worked for about 3 years in the 80s. And then I worked for communities and schools on the south side of San Antonio at Harlandale Junior High and High School, where I worked with a teacher by the name of Lydia Histand. She was academic, I was career. We worked in the same portable classroom where gang members who had self-identified were being segregated out of mainstream classrooms and put into these portables where I taught them job skills. She kept them up academically. And then I developed the job sites, placed them, supervised them over summer, paid them, disciplined them, fired them if I had to. That grant money ran out, and Mexican American Unity Council picked me up. Oh, I had another gig before that. I worked for Catholic Charities. I was a community emergency assistance program coordinator on the West Side. Was trained by one of the best social workers San Antonio's ever seen, Carmen Badillo. And she and Maria Antonieta Berriozabal were the founders of COPS, Citizens Organized for Public Service, back in the 70s and 80s. They're responsible. And Rosie Castro for making sure those West Side streets got paved, because up until then, anytime it rained, the West Side was nothing but mud.
Is still COPS? Is that still what is now COPS Metro?
Yes, that's them. So, and then I went and worked for MOC, and I did Mexican American Unity Council. I ran a first-time offender program for teenagers, ages 12 to 15. with some history of substance abuse. And then I went and worked in Austin at Travis County Juvenile Department and worked in their diversion program as an ISP gang unit officer. And I had specialized caseloads of Spanish speaking offenders, sex offenders, felony offenders. And then dad got sick, went home, helped mom out for about a year and a half. And that's when she came back and said, you should go back and consider law school. You know, you've been doing this work for 11 years. You still can't even break 40 grand a year. I see you work your tail off for people and you're smart. You're smart. You can do this. She encouraged me. I'd also been encouraged by a woman that I had dated earlier, and she got me, you know, researching the Soros Foundation, and she wanted me to apply to school in New York because they have a New York University has a full scholarship for folks interested in public interest law that the Soros Foundation funds. In the end, I got admitted by St. Mary's University, my old alma mater, and I came back up to San Antonio, and I finished law school, and then I was in solo practice after that. And you know, as an attorney, I felt very much like, because of the work that I did, a glorified social worker, because I went from being all those things that I did for people to, I tried my hand at a lot of things, a little bit of personal injury. I tried my hand at criminal defense. I did a lot of defending of defendants in my court now who were in domestic violence courts in County Court 7. And I did a lot of hot checks representation, and I did a lot of family law. And after about 5 years, I needed to focus in one area. I was kind of tired of being over there, over here, and running back and forth, this county to that county. So I focused on family law. And then I got to focus on child protective services because I knew that environment. I knew those families. And by the last 5 years of my attorney professional career, I had gotten board certified as a child welfare law specialist. I was the only one in Bexar County that was board certified, only one in South Texas. The National Association of Counsel for Children was the only certifying organization at the time. The October before I got elected judge was the first time that Texas offered the certification program for Texas attorneys. And so now we have a handful of certified attorneys who can say they're specializing in child protective services law. But at the time I got elected, I was the only one. So got to do a lot of great work for families, for foster kids, for grandparents trying to get children out of foster care, for foster parents trying to adopt kids whose families just couldn't get it together enough to get their kids back, weren't appropriate enough to get their kids back. So my heart has always been to serve. And I've always been to, even as an attorney, now as a judge, to provide something in return to the community I live in and the community that I love to live in. You know, I love it so much, I want everybody else to love it. And it's just unfortunate that some people have different journeys in our community. Some people are victims, some people are perpetrators. And so I'm trying to do our part to address one of the big issues that we have in Bexar County, which is child abuse and domestic violence. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's one and the same. The only difference is the age of the person suffering.
The first time I heard you speak was right before the pandemic. And in person, the first time I heard you speak in person was right before the pandemic. And you were talking about the specialty courts and how you made some changes to yours in particular, because you and this like totally blew my mind, because I really like to think of myself as always being curious. I like to learn. I like to look at things from lots of different perspectives. But I really saw my own intolerance when you said that that the women were asking you to fix the men. Like they were like, I still love this person, and what I'd really like is for you to find a way to make him stop hitting me so I can continue to love this person. And you said, yeah, okay,
we can try.
I had to try. And I thought that like that just flipped my thinking on its ear.
Yeah, and because you and I both and women around us have friends in this situation. And those are the friends that we look at each other like, girl, she's back. Girl, she
Like,
went back to
no.
him again. Can you believe that? He left
Mhm.
her with the black eye the last time he did this and she's back, right? And we talk to each other about that person. We
Mhm.
love them, we care about them, but we're kind of like, what else can
What do
we
we
do?
do? Yeah.
Right? So that the stats show in our community, and if you talk to people like Patricia Castillo with the Peace Initiative and Marta Pelaez with the Battered Women's Shelter, they each will tell you, or Carrie Wilcoxon, who does a lot of work with the faith-based community, they will tell you that the women and even men, there are women and men who are at the other side of this fist and this hand, are returning to the aggressor, the person who uses violence, 7, 8, 9 times. And at the end of that journey, they end up in one of two places. They end up having left the individual for good, or they end up dead. And so now we know this, right? We know that women and some men are returning to the aggressor because they feel passionately, profoundly that they love them. So what can we as a community do to help in that situation? Well, why don't we try to address the behavior and curtail, modify, eliminate the behavior so that when this person who has suffered at the hands of the aggressor decides to go back, it could possibly be a little bit safer for them.
Mhm.
You know, maybe we have an opportunity to change this individual. Why? Because we've learned more about the person that uses violence. We've learned in this court that 93% of the cases that come through County Court at Law number 13 involve individuals who were under the influence of alcohol, cocaine, meth, 2 or all 3 of them. And out of that 93%, when you talk to them, almost 100% of them self-disclose that they themselves are adult survivors of childhood trauma, abuse, young adulthood trauma or abuse. And they could not stop their own feelings of pain, anxiety, depression, and anger until they reached out for a substance to numb them. That numbing resulted in them becoming addicts. So knowing that, my spouse and I wrote a House bill. Once I got elected to the bench, we went and said, you know, we got a great idea for a new specialty court. This is how we're going to do a new approach to domestic violence. And everywhere we went, the door was closed in our face. And they said, we're not going to help violent offenders. Hang them high. We're in Texas. You need to punish them. Not everybody needs punishment. Some people need treatment. Some people need treatment and punishment, right? Some people just need treatment and then they straighten out. So we were at a loss. We were kind of had almost given up on the idea of this type of specialty court when the godfather of specialty courts in Bexar County had a conversation with me, retired Judge Al Alonso. He did his dissertation work when he got his master's in laws as a judge on specialty courts. He was very much interested in this concept. And he started the adult drug court. I was one of his first attorneys. Nobody would fund him. So he asked me, knowing the background that I just shared with you, knowing my background, he asked me to work for him. He says, I know you believe in my cause, and I know you believe we can change people. So can you work for me for free? And when we start getting funding, I'll start to pay you. And I agreed. And
Now
over
that's
time,
passion right there. That right there is what I love to call Texas ingenuity. Like there's something about knowing that you know what you're doing is right and that your purpose is a righteous purpose, and you need,
you
regardless
need
of
to just
what's
do
going
it,
on,
right?
you just got to do it. You just got to
Do
make it
it.
happen.
So we did it. And from that seed back in 2003, 2004 to the present, We now have 14 specialty courts in Bexar County. We have the highest number in the whole state of Texas. Now, going back to what he told me, he said, write a House bill. We did. House Bill 3529. It got sponsored by Roland Gutierrez, House Representative, and co-sponsored by Senator Jose Menendez. Let me just say something to y'all, folks. If remember that, how does a bill become a law? Schoolhouse Rock cartoon we all watched. In order for that bill to get off those steps and become a law in Texas, you need to make sure your bill is sponsored by both a representative in the House and a senator in the Senate. If you don't have those two working together, your bill will not get out of the chambers. Okay. We had both. It got out of chambers. It sat on Governor Abbott's desk for about a month and a half, and then he signed it into law as an unfunded mandate. And he said, go for it. Go look for funding.
So you had people supporting you on both sides, because the governor is Republican, Senator Menendez is a Democrat. I didn't hear who you said was.
It was Roland Gutierrez. He's also a Democrat. So it was a bipartisan.
You had a bipartisan, and that's something else for people to remember, that you have to reach out to both sides of the aisle,
right?
And you have to start doing this early. Because I'm sure you didn't just wait until session opened and start.
Right. And we were just talking about it a couple of days ago, that we never imagined being where we are now. When I first took the bench, we thought it was going to take at least one full term. And at the end of the term, we'd get to the specialty court. But we got to it right out of the chute. And we were able to launch. It took a year. It took a year, Tiffany, for us. Once it's got signed into law,
that's nothing. That's no time, really,
to get our restorative justice DA at the table, to get the sheriff at the table, to get lifetime recovery at the table.
You're working your hiney off, getting all those people. That's a lot of people to get.
You have to get all those team players to make this court work. And then a year later, we launched it. July 31st of 2020, we launched it. August of 2021, we had our first graduating class with 2 women and 2 men. Right now, we have about 25 participants. Our next graduation is going to happen January 21st. It's a Friday. We are in the midst of planning that graduation already. So we have started the ball rolling. We work with the offender. It is a trauma-informed wraparound services
and they graduate
program.
So if they're graduating, are you taking them through a curriculum?
We do use a curriculum. It's called the Mission Possible 360 curriculum. It was developed by a psychologist by the name of Jerry Teo from Southern California. I met Jerry Teo for the first time ever back in the early 90s. I went to a Takata conference in Austin, and he was putting on a presentation on how to shore up the man again, how to make our men strong in our community again. And he just impressed me so much. And then I heard his name again through the American Indian Tribal Associations, and they work very closely with them over at the neighborhood place. He comes in from time to time, but he developed this curriculum specifically targeted to violent offenders with the substance abuse problem. Exactly what we needed to get this court launched. So we have that. Adult probation has a special probation officer with a background working with specialty courts and violent offenders. We have lifetime recovery that works with us, Center for Healthcare Services. We have our own case manager. We have Oxford Homes and Alpha Home helping us out. Comfort Cafe offers community service opportunities. The district clerk has worked with us. The county clerk is one of our partners. The children's shelter is one of our newest partners because they have a special curriculum for parents who have issues with domestic violence. So guess what? Those people in Reflejo Court, and I'll get to the name in a minute, who have children have that additional parenting component they must complete as part of our program. The program is called Reflejo Court. Reflejo in Spanish means reflection. And there's a story behind the name to the court. On the first day I took the bench on January 1st of 2019, a good friend of mine's father, Masa, who is a shaman out of Bernie area, came to my courtroom, into my chambers, and did a native blessing and cleansing of the area. And at the end of his ceremony, he gave me a round beaded necklace with a mirror on it. And he said, you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. On bad days, put this close to your chest and then look into that mirror, because you've always known the answer and you just have to see it in your own eyes. And so that moment for me was a catalyst about teaching people how to use what they don't recognize that is within themselves. And it's very much part of our program. It's about teaching folks, one, recognizing their own trauma, acknowledging that hurt people. And if we can't fix them, they're going to continue to hurt people. People in this area of problems will continue to create more and more victims, because when they leave this victim, they find another one. And when they leave that one, they find another one. And many of those have children. And so then you create a generational problem. But if you can fix it at the spigot, I'm going to paraphrase Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela has said, we need to quit pulling the people out of the drowning people out of the river. And we need to go upriver and figure out why they're falling into the river in the first place to fix that. So we need to go to the spigot, right? The source of the behavior, which is the trauma, address the trauma, give them those wraparound services. Let's get them sober. Let's give them the skills they need so that they don't return to the judicial system again. And we turn them into productive members of our community, as opposed to relegating them to the lowest rung of our invisible caste system. And you know it exists, where people with any type of this type of criminal background are relegated to the lowest rung. They don't have job opportunities. They don't have educational opportunities, and parenting opportunities become limited. Why? Because now they have a criminal background. Now they're labeled a violent offender. But if we can get that addressed, then they can get those professional jobs. They can apply for financial aid, and they don't have to go into court and tell the judge, I can't be a primary because I'm a violent offender, judge. I can't be a primary caretaker to my kids. That's how much of a difference this program can make in the lives of people.
Wow. Now, I really love what you just said here about the agency that a person has within them, that you can change. You're essentially giving them the tools to improve their lives and address the very thing that they undoubtedly didn't know how to address, because something as massive as abuse and as the trauma that a person has endured that causes them to be an abuser, that requires some very specialized assistance. It's just not something that you're going to look upon on your own. You can't DIY that.
And let me tell you something. We are the first, and right now the only court that has stepped up to get that trauma-informed certification from the City of San Antonio's Metro Health Department. The City of San Antonio's Metro Health Department has created a division to help with the education of our community in regards to trauma and domestic violence. And they have trainers that will come out to your organizations and agencies and certify you as trauma informed. So you can have a nonprofit and you can say, and once you do their program, which is 1.5 to 2 years, you can list yourself as a trauma informed agency. You can have a school of teachers, because I just contacted a teacher that had communication with the teacher. Just, man, I really like what you're saying about I said, the trauma-informed stuff. I said, if you call the city, they'll come out and train your whole campus of teachers. And if you get enrolled, your campus can be trained for a period of 1.5 to 2 years. And you can say your campus is trauma-informed because you're seeing those children coming into your classroom, manifesting all the signs of trauma, and you don't know what to do with them. But if you're trauma-informed certified, guess what? You'll know what to do with them.
Audience, you've been listening to On the Record with Tiffany and to the Honorable Rosie Gonzalez. And the thing that I think is one of the greatest takeaways from listening to Judge Gonzalez is that one person can make a difference. The idea that they won't let you or we can't, that's not the way to go. When you see something, you see a problem, you can address the problem. And it may take you some time to get all of the pieces together, because what you're talking about was a massive undertaking. What the Honorable Rosie Gonzalez did for us, for our community, was a massive undertaking, and she did it. Wrote legislation, got the courts in order, and got the help for the community that was needed. You've been listening to On the Record with Tiffany on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, and our wonderful partnership with the African American Network. We have a local feel with a global reach. Just pay attention to what's going on in the world around you, and know you can make a difference too.